you may have noticed this morning that our reading was from the book of Revelation. It is one of those books that is just a little bit difficult. It is the final book in the Bible, and it's a whopper. And it seems kind of like an unexpected plot twist. The rest of the New Testament is fairly straightforward. The Gospels are filled with extraordinary miracles, but these miracles seem more or less to take place within the ordinary course of things. And then the rest of the New Testament, there's a lot of letters, a lot of practical advice on how to live in community, advice to churches, and then, bam, there's the revelation to John. It has been the springboard for many fertile imaginations, and there's even a new Left Behind movie starring Nicolas Cage, which strikes me as far more frightening than anything that is actually found in the book of Revelation. And so the premise of Revelation is that John receives a heavenly vision while exiled on the island of Patmos. And what a vision it is. There are all of the numbers and the symbols, not to mention a fair amount of violence. There are beasts and horses and winged creatures, and I cannot think of another word to describe this text besides trippy. Scholars believe that the book was written during a time of persecution of the early church by the Roman Empire, which may help explain some of the violence. But still, this doesn't undo the bizarre and often frightening nature of the text. And joy of joys, the thing was canonized. And by the way, it was no means a shoo-in for inclusion in the final cut of scripture. But it was canonized, and here it is. And if we take scripture seriously, which we really probably should, sometimes we have to deal with these difficult kinds of texts. And dear friends, today is All Saints' Day, which seems to me an ideal time to do so. All Saints' Day is a feast day in the life of the church that commemorates all Christian people of every time and place. It is a time to celebrate those who have gone before and those who are still in our midst. And so on this All Saints' Day, we are given this text in the 7th chapter of Revelation that depicts the great multitude gathered around the throne of God. They have come from all corners of the earth. They identify in as many varied ways as people do, but here they all are together at the end of all things, wearing matching outfits and singing the same song. They are bound together by one thing. They have come through some kind of great trial, some kind of great ordeal, and they are here to worship God day in and day out. All their past sufferings will be forgotten as Christ, the Lamb who was slain, leads them beside still waters, and God wipes away all tears. All the barriers that keep us apart from God and from each other. Geography, differences in language, culture, nationality, political affiliation, gender, race, class, who we are attracted to, and then things like time and space, and even the finality of death. All of this will be gone. All of these barriers that we put up will be gone. What an extraordinary hope. Whatever or wherever or whenever comes next, it probably isn't what we imagine it to be. And if God is an old white man with a beard, I'm going to absolutely lose it. But still, this depiction of heaven in Revelation rings true to me, that whatever's next, we will be with God, and we will be with each other. I always get a little antsy whenever people talk too much about heaven. There's a great Johnny Cash song called No Earthly Good, in which he points out the risk of good Christians becoming so heavenly minded that they're no earthly good. After all, if we devote most of our time and attention to what's next, if we spend a lot of energy worrying about personal salvation or making sure that we get the closest seat next to Jesus, we may miss out on ways to serve others right here and right now. This kind of otherworldly thinking can lead people of faith to be disengaged with the world around them, to not worry about things like world hunger or climate change or struggles for justice. And so I can't imagine that this text in Revelation is meant to serve as a substitute for engagement with the world around us, or even as a literal depiction of the afterlife, because last time I checked, that's still a mystery. And so, what if this business in Revelation is a reflection not only of the way things will be at some point in the future, but of the way things can be right now? A clue to this lies in the very nature of the book of Revelation. It is apocalyptic literature, a kind of writing that depicts the end of all things. But what we imagine about later is almost always a reflection of now. To give a really trivial example, think of all those great B movies, the sci-fi movies from the 50s, or early episodes of Doctor Who. They look like a product of their time and place, even though they're about a distant future. I am not suggesting that the book of Revelation is Doctor Who, by the way. So this reflection is always heightened in biblical apocalyptic literature because these texts were written during times of intense persecution. And so they imagine a future that lies on the other side of conflict and difficulty. So what John of Patmos is imagining here is a time when all the saints will be gathered together, when all of those challenges, divisions, and grief of life are no more. But what if this vision is not only a future hope, but also a present reality? Admittedly, this can be hard to see in the world in which we actually live. When we pay attention to the news or the world around us, it seems like the pain can just be too much to bear. There's the Ebola crisis in West Africa, children shooting children, ecological disasters brought on by human actions, suicide bombings in the Middle East. And then there's the pain that hits close to home, struggling with mental or physical illnesses, the crushing weight of grief, our own fear. Being a human being is hard. And I would imagine for John, exiled on the island of Patmos, sweltering under the relentless sun, and writing the ecstatic vision that we read today, being a human being was hard. But what got written down here, anyway, was about being with others who love Jesus and who had also been through something. I would imagine that this was a source of hope and sustenance for John, and so too may it be for us. When he was a child and upset by the suffering in the world, Mr. Rogers, yes, that Mr. Rogers, mother told him to look for the helpers. And so who are your helpers? Or, to use the language of this All Saints' Day, who are your saints? Who are those people who help you to see God's love in our broken world? And since I have often considered changing my own middle name to It Takes a Village, my own list of saints is rather lengthy, so I will not share all of them with you because we would be here well into next week, but here are a few of my saints. My maternal grandmother, Janie, who taught me to delight in the whole of creation, and that laughing until it hurts is a really good practice. Julian of Norwich, 14th century English mystic who saw God as the creator, the lover, and the sustainer of all things, and who famously wrote, "And all shall be well, and all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well." She also had a cat. I like that too. St. Francis of Assisi, we have a statue out on the green, who loved birds and people and considered the moon to be his brother. My dear friend Anna, who is one of the bravest, wisest, most faithful, and funniest people I know, who wears liturgically appropriate Chuck Taylor high tops and is pretty much who I want to be when I grow up. And Johnny Cash, who took the whole Visit the Prisoners thing to heart and recorded one of the best live albums ever from within the walls of Folsom Prison in California. Flannery O'Connor, the author from Milledgeville, Georgia, who taught me that at its heart, prayer is really about being super honest with God. And as I said, I could go on. But all of these people have this in common. Their lives are witness to the unfailing love of God. They are light in dark places. They have worked for love and peace and justice, but also for the cause of unbridled joy. By their example, I have a pretty good sense that God is also on the side of these things. I really do hope you take some time to consider your own saints. Maybe sit down this afternoon with pen and paper and list out those people who have been light in the world or in your world. These can be people known to you personally or not. My own list is heavy on writers, but what about artists? What about prophets? What about your third grade Sunday school teacher? But our saints are not merely role models. Whenever we are frustrated or cranky or anxious, we can be sustained by those who have gone before us or who are speaking to us now. None of us can do this faith thing on our own, and nor are we meant to. And so we are given the good gift of each other, and mercy of mercies, we are not limited by insignificant little details such as time or death. In the wondrous love of Christ, we are all of us bound together in a way that is so powerful that neither death, nor life, nor angels, nor rulers, nor things present, nor things to come, nor height, nor depth, nor anything else in the whole of creation can ever separate us.